Hi folks, welcome to your MWIS Winter Planner. This is updated on Friday the 20th of January. Now, the cold air that we've had during this week is just about surviving into the weekend, but we are seeing changes develop as milder Atlantic air moves its way in, and a gradual thaw will develop as temperatures lift above freezing point on the mountains in the days ahead. A few days of sort of rather mixed and murky conditions with some patchy rain around, some weak fronts topple their way in. High pressure will be nearby during the week ahead though, so some fair days. Does look a bit chillier again from midweek. Looking at the general pressure patterns then that we're expecting over the next few weeks, and this chart shows you where pressure is either higher or lower than the seasonal average, and for the week ahead it's broadly higher than average around the British Isles, so that would indicate more settled conditions would prevail. It may just allow some weak weather systems to topple around its northern side at times, but overall we'd be looking at small amounts of precipitation. The temperatures then will just vary a little bit, and it will depend exactly where the source of the air is coming from at any point during the week. With these settled conditions as well, there's the chance for some misty, murky conditions, but also could be some inversion conditions in there at times. Now, there is a degree of uncertainty as we go forwards over a few weeks ahead as to exactly where the centre of that high pressure will position itself. Some indications would have it broadly around Britain and just to the south, which would just allow maybe some occasional weather systems to skirt around its northern edge and bring something a bit more mixed at times, mainly to northern Scotland, but still more often quieter conditions further towards the south. Temperature-wise, we'd look to be somewhat milder at this point, with the airflow is more often coming around from the Atlantic, but maybe some fluctuations from time to time, with some lowering of freezing levels at times and some frosty nights in the valleys and the glens. What seems likely, though, is that as we go a bit further into early February, is that more Atlantic-dominated patterns would try and come back in, so a more sort of average westerly type of airflow, west by southwesterly perhaps, would prevail as we go further into the start of next month. Higher pressure then retreating further southeastwards, lower pressure near Iceland starting to dominate. So a windier spell, more in the way of frequent precipitation, often falling as rain, but again, some fluctuations of freezing level, maybe some quite rapid changes day to day, where there's some milder days and some colder days. Looking at some of the details then as we go into the week ahead, and this is the freezing level sequence, and most terrain is frozen on Saturday morning after another hard frost into many valleys and glens, but the milder air is already encroaching in to the west coast of Scotland. That will get further across the northwest highlands through the day, lifting above freezing point even to most higher tops here. Inland across the highlands, though, many central parts will hold that temperature around freezing point on the mountains, even to some lower slopes, so terrain is staying extensively frozen, and the cold air mass still is across England and Wales. Here, another frost to come overnight into Sunday. The milder air gradually filtering in across Scotland further, though. Again, a few slopes might hold quite close to freezing point on Sunday, so we will see some local temperature variations, but many of the mountains lifting to freezing point or above, particularly in more western regions. And even England and Wales by this stage on Sunday likely to be lifting above freezing towards higher slopes. That milder air then is more extensive as we go into the start of the new week. Still a frost likely in central southeast England as they hang on to the colder air mass, but across most of our mountain areas it's very much milder and temperatures well above freezing point as we go through into Monday, with an ongoing thaw then across the mountains. Tuesday as well, probably the mildest air of the week that wafts its way in from the southwest. Not a huge amount of change of temperature with height on the mountains, it must be said by this stage, so quite a stable weather situation we would call that. We have a lowering of freezing level likely to develop then from the north as we go onwards into the middle of the week, maybe even dropping back below 800 metres across Scotland through Wednesday, and maybe then just a suggestion that some cooler air is around, with the greater risk of some frost back into the valleys and the glens as we go into the later part of the week. But things may then chop and change a bit as we head further ahead. The lying snow depth that is on the ground then as we go forward, as well as we start the weekend, extensive across northern and northwestern Scotland, and lying snow is to be found on most of the mountains of Britain as we start the weekend, and it will be there more or less all this weekend, but will just start to thaw and thin a little bit, particularly in the northwestern highlands, but expect there to be snow on the ground even as we start the new week. It's just somewhat retreating a little bit and will become gradually more confined to higher terrain. This is through into Tuesday. You'll see the gradual retreating of the snow, but so much has fallen during the past week. The mountain tops will still keep a fair amount, even though temperatures are lifting. I suspect there will still be a fair amount of snow then on the ground on the tops into the second half of the week, but it is just becoming a bit more patchy and fragmented. Some of the high tops in England and Wales may hold it locally. That's almost too small a local resolution to be shown really on this model, but some icy conditions are still to be expected in places here. Looking at the synoptic charts then for the next few days, and Saturday has high pressure which is influencing England and Wales, centred just to the east of us. The warm front draped over western Scotland is the beginning of the milder air filtering in, and that producing some rain and snow and some freezing rain even for a time as that falls into the cold air mass. The tightly packed isobars indicating the stronger winds across the Highlands. Some very gusty conditions developing then, particularly around northern and western coastal areas, and even around the Cairngorms. Some powerful gusts may develop into some northern corries, and that sort of situation could be around for a few days as this milder air gets in and the atmosphere is what we'd call fairly stable. It does indicate that those quite gusty conditions will develop, and that will be through some of the passes down to some lower slopes. The strongest wind speeds may not always be on the highest terrain then. Overall, Sunday's wind speeds don't look quite as strong, but still rather gusty, especially across Scotland. We have those fronts making some gradual progress eastwards and producing rather murky and damp conditions across many western hills and mountains, typically south from about the Isle of Skye, down the West Highlands into Dumfries and Galloway, and some patchy rain and low cloud fringing in to the Irish Sea coastal mountains as well. But further east, not too much in the way of any rainfall, still some fairly bright conditions maybe around in places, but some foggy areas in the valleys lower down for England and Wales. Monday maintains that milder southwesterly airflow across Scotland. Again, those rather gusty winds coming through. Some murky, drizzly conditions focused on more western hills, with some breaks in the cloud and some brighter conditions, typically, again, northern side of the Cairngorms. Low cloud may also fringe again into those western coastal parts of England and Wales, just depending on how far that front gets its way eastwards and southwards. Whereas further across Pennine areas, the Peak District and mid-Wales, it's still under high pressure and maybe some rather foggy and still quite cool conditions here. Southwesterly winds prevail as we go through Tuesday, some generally mild conditions across the Highlands. Again, temperatures well above freezing point on the mountains, with some drizzle and low cloud focused in the west. And again, some drizzle possible for western hills of England and Wales. Low cloud again, just around western hills and mountains. By Wednesday, it's likely that a cold front will start to advance southwards, a bit of uncertainty on timing, but that then allows that chillier air to come down from the north, and some patchy rain and drizzle on that front, maybe even something of sleet or wet snow, just maybe for a time on its back edge, just as patchy and light amounts, with some clearer and brighter conditions likely then following from the north. So somewhat more in the way of sunshine probably by this stage across Scotland. Quite a change then compared to what we've experienced during the past week. You can keep right up to date with all your local information, of course, on our website. That is your winter planner. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.